I sit here and I'll defend a little bit of this in that I would argue the reason people were able to come to their own conclusion on Joe Biden is because of the media coverage. You know, look, we were subtle. He's using the back staircase. He's not using the front staircase. Hey, he's not doing any interviews. So there was this reluctance to draw the conclusion to say, is he not doing this? And that I agree with. That was held back a lot. I would argue it was also held back a lot back in the late 80s when it was clear Ronald Reagan wasn't necessarily running everything in the White House. Whether you want to call it decorum, whatever you want to call it, look, there were plenty of members of the media. I remember David Ignatius in the Washington Post, plenty of individual people questioning whether he should run. I certainly questioned whether he should run. You didn't understand, you know, there were some of that. But I understand the argument about the collective on that front. The only thing I can chalk it up to is this, whatever you want to call it, this fear that some members of the media had sometimes that they would be perceived as helping Trump if they somehow diminished Biden, right? That it was some sort of zero-sum game. And I think this has been the fundamental mistake that many members of the traditional press have done.
We're going to talk about the intentional activism of the mainstream media. As you saw from the intro, that was Chuck Todd. I think he no longer works in legacy media anymore. And he's being shockingly honest about why the Biden mental health, the mental fitness question was never answered until after the election. It's because there was this unwillingness from journalists, so-called journalists, into actually digging deeper into, hey, is it really Biden? Is Biden really mentally fit to be president of the United States? Should Biden really run? Because of their fear that they will be somehow helping Donald Trump. And the truth is the truth, regardless who it helps. If I said that, hey, black people are 78% of the NBA, therefore I can infer that black people tend to be better athletes, does that truth make me racist for calling it out and saying that, hey, oh, I'm assuming that black people are usually going to be better athletes than white people because of outcomes? And this is the problem with liberal bias. This is how liberal bias has destroyed the credibility of the mainstream media. And there's this guy called Chris Chilza, who he himself admitted that they didn't do a good enough job going through the smoke screen that was Joe Biden. But as you saw from the intro, Chuck Todd hinted at the fact that no journalist, because journalism, I always say it a lot on this channel, and I'm going to reiterate it here, is the most liberal profession in the United States of America. Yes, journalism is the most liberal profession. There's more liberals in journalism than any other job field. So when you have these journalists who have a bias towards the Republican Party, have a bias for the Democratic Party, it's hard for them to do their job. This is why many people, especially in the public eye, believe that the mainstream media participated in intentional activism. And one of the best examples of this is the Russian collusion hoax. Check out this clip with Tulsi Gabbard and her explaining that she's trying to find the cause and source of the Russian collusion hoax and try to find some accountability for these people to discourage people from doing this in the future. Let's take a look.
Is anyone ever going to be held accountable for abusing power to that level?
Well, that's the goal, Sean. That's the goal, is to find the evidence, find the documentation that proves this to be true. We've seen little bits and pieces of it that have been released publicly so far, but not anywhere near the extent of what the intent was behind this whole Russia collusion hoax. Obviously, the president was their #1 target, and there were also many other people around President Trump who were also targeted simply because they were friends of his or family members of his. We are digging deep to find everything that has been related to this, and I guarantee you there are some U.S. attorneys who are eager to see what we are finding, and in some cases are already working their own cases to bring about that necessary accountability. If no one is ever held accountable, we are going to continue to see this weaponization, politicization of the intelligence community, our law enforcement, the Department of Justice. And as you know, Sean, it completely undermines the rule of law and the American people's ability to have any trust whatsoever in these foundational principles of our country. And that's what we're trying to restore, that trust.
So let's go to Chris Chilza's comment about how he doesn't agree with this statement here. We'll start with her statement. Media efforts to conceal Biden's being demented was not herd mentality. Although that is its own unforgivable sin, it was intentional activism. Let me know in the comment section if you agree with this sentiment here from Emma Joe Morris, right? Let me know if you agree with that. Because even though herd mentality, that also picks to bias as well. And this is the funny part about the media, these media journalists, how they claim that they're objective. They're just calling it down the middle. They're just calling balls and stripes. No, you're not. Herd mentality signals to me that, oh, you're a biased institution. Oh, you let your bias go in, because that's how the only way you can get herd mentality, if everyone has the same bias. I don't agree. While I absolutely believe that the media, myself very much included, didn't work hard enough, right? But that's bias too. You didn't want to work hard enough to hurt your preferred candidate in an election. That's what you forgot to add. That's context for you, Chris. To get around the smokescreen the Biden people were putting up around him. It's like the media, they operated like a person that don't want to admit that their spouse or someone is doing something wrong to them. Like, no, I don't believe Jimmy had bad intentions in hurting me and scamming me. You know, like when a family member scams you out of money and you don't want to believe it. You try you try to look every which way not to confront the reality. That was the mainstream media. I do not think that it was intentional activism. We simply didn't push hard enough because our bias wouldn't let us. We didn't want to help Donald Trump win. We don't want to be seen as helping Donald Trump. Of course it was. If 85% of the public could see it, you could see it too. You just didn't want to. Exactly. You're biased. You're biased. And I got an interesting clip too that I want to highlight here is that we didn't push hard enough. Like his arguments about the media didn't push hard enough. Here's a video. You know, and this is why this is why I trust the internet more than I trust the television. Because the internet has all the receipts. We have all the receipts. You can't sit here and make these fake justifications for your lack of action. Chris Chilza. We didn't push hard enough, says Chris Chilza. Here's Jake Tapper asking people for their medical credentials rather than address the issue. Let's take a look.
Every time he comes on stage or they turn to him, I'm like, Joe, can you get it out? Let's get the words out, Joe. You kind of feel bad for him.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on
you check out the gaslighting. This is the media. It wasn't intentional activism. What is this then? It wasn't intentional activism when Americans were believing that we were in a recession and you created articles after articles. You guys, if you're new to this channel, there's this post I love to post from The Guardian saying that voters falsely believed that Biden's economy was bad. I love bringing that article up. The Guardian. Majority of voters falsely believe that Biden's economy was bad. And then what? In 2025, Politico come out. Voters were right. Biden's economy wasn't as good as it seemed. Wow. And the same thing played out here. The same pattern played out here again. Before Joe Biden went on that debate stage, could get destroyed by Donald Trump. 63% of Americans believe that Biden was mentally unfit to be president. A real journalist, not a propagandist would create try to gaslight people to not believe their eyes or not to ask questions or let themselves get duped by the smoke screen, right? Chuck Todd exposed you already. He said there were subtle things. Oh, he's taking the back door. Oh, he's not taking as many interviews. There were signs there, and as a journalist, your instinct wasn't to investigate further to confirm conclusions? No, it was to back away because you were scared what the conclusions will tell you. Chris Chilza. And this is why no one trusts the mainstream media anymore.
With Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
You are
to watch somebody on stage search for
It's so amazing.
questions
It's so amazing to me
and try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you
stuttering,
were mocking his stutter.
Yeah,
I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody
Diagnosing, see, and this is what my argument always been. They'll claim that, oh, it's false because you have no evidence to suggest that Joe Biden is actually going through a mental decline. And then I say, you're false because you don't have any evidence to suggest that he's not going through a cognitive decline. So we both are making assumptions here. So what makes your assumptions better than mine? What makes your assumptions truer than mine? When based on observable reality, everyone had it right with no evidence, but you had it wrong with no evidence. So we all made a claim there. That's a claim. So how can you prove my claim is false? You have to have something that validates my claim as being false, not because of the fact that I lack evidence makes my claim. It makes no damn sense. And this is how the media gets themselves in trouble. This is how they get painted as intentional activism. It was great to watch dishonest activist media types who pose as journalists get fact-checked by their own work. We enjoyed the most dishonest propaganda media outlets in history, but suffered through it with evidence of their lies at our fingertips. What will we do without you? The point. With Chris Chilza. Republicans keep trying to make Biden's mental capacity an issue. Here it is. Here's an article that this guy is reading saying, oh, we suffered from herd mentality, me included, but it wasn't intentional activism. You are giving this statement based on the tagline. You're giving a negative conception about how, hey, there should be no logical, no reasonable person will doubt Biden's mental capabilities. That's how the frame of your title comes across, Chris Chilza, when you made it in 2021. And this is what the problem people have. The media is sitting here trying to cover their tracks, but it's obvious. Like, we have all the receipts. The internet has all the receipts. And it's still sitting here trying to tell you that they can lie in your face and expect you to believe it. These people, bro. And it goes back to our original tweet here. Absolutely no one believes this, Chris. We are literally posting videos of dude falling asleep during meetings, and you are still accusing us of pushing cheap fakes. It was intentional activism. You guys be the judge in the comment section. Come on, Chris, don't blow sunshine up my butt. Good golly, I could sit and watch CNN and see the guy was not fully there. End quote. You guys were guilty of ignoring what was blatantly in front of you. It was painfully evident during the campaign why it took till the debate gate to notice or admit it is something that should ask themselves. Probably won't, though. Falling asleep at meetings was the least of the signs. A ton of the old crowd in Washington got caught doing that, but most of them didn't circle an empty stage offering to shake hands. He was either too dumb to be an actual journalist or simply plain dumb to hide his activism within his journalism, which is true. For now, I'll assume he's not dumb, but I can be swayed. This is how the media gets themselves caught up, right? And there's blatant narratives too, right? Here's one. I'm gonna give my voice a little break. Here's another clip that I got showing that, like, this is how normal Americans are reacting to some of the framings that the media love to cast on Trump, Republicans, and I keep saying this over and over again, and I don't know when the media is going to be reflective. I don't know when the media is going to be self-critical of itself. It's always having an excuse for why it got stuff wrong instead of admitting, hey, we need to hold ourselves accountable because we got it wrong, because we let our bias get in our way. Here's a clip of an American, I don't know what he is, but his enactment of how the media frame things is fairly accurate. Let's take a look.
Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, everything was Trump's fault. Trump's in office. Everything is Trump's fault. If something good happens, it's not because of Trump. If price goes up, it's not the president's fault unless Trump's in office. If gas prices go down and you're a Democratic president, then you did that. But if your name is Trump, you had nothing to do with it. Isn't it interesting that over the last 4 years, the previous administration was gaslighting the American people and saying that prices weren't going up and yet they campaigned on lowering prices. But then as soon as Donald Trump takes office, they blame him for all the prices going up. The Democrats want to say that Donald Trump is for the rich, and yet majority of billionaires and millionaires just happen to support the Democratic Party. Why is it that so many of these Democratic politicians are supposed to make under $200K a year, and yet they're multimillionaires? We know how Trump made his money through business. These politicians made their income off our tax money. And they want to talk about the stock market crashing right now. It's actually a perfect opportunity to buy, because the stock market is just going to readjust itself. And they don't want to talk about the fact when it crashed between 2022 and 2023. These people fail to realize that the wealthiest 70% control majority of the stocks. So the stock market dipping like this gives us a great opportunity. So when the market looks like this, a lot of those investors like to take money out of their stocks and put it into bonds. When that happens, that helps to lower other rates. You know, those same rates that made it almost impossible to own a home under the previous administration. I just find it interesting that they're all about immediate gratification now when they didn't care about anything the past 4 years. Have a good one.
And now you notice that on the video, he talked about Democrats, not the media, but essentially that's how the media operated, because the media is Democrat. The media are Democrat. I just talked about how majority of journalists are liberal. That means I can infer that most of them donated to the Democratic Party, right? The media are Democrats. And because the media are Democrats, they always take a negative frame when it's a Republican office and always a positive benefit of the doubt when it's a Democratic president, because that's their person, that's their guy. And this is the threat of liberal bias. Liberal bias prevented journalists from breaking a historic story and exposing Joe Biden as being mentally unfit, validating the concerns American voters already had about Joe Biden. Hell, Democratic voters did not want Joe Biden to run again for re-election. But what did they do? What did the Democratic Party do? No primaries, no Democratic primaries. Shut out all the candidates. None of the media outlets interviewed none of these candidates. Don't you find that suspicious? Don't you find that strange? When did the journalists want to interview Democrats that are being shut out from running for the 2024 primary in the Democratic Party? When did the media want to expose that? When did the media want to talk more about that? The media is not about informing people, though. The media is about getting people to buy into a certain perception. And if that media is owned, operated, and aligned with a certain party, they'll do things in that party's interest. It's no coincidence that media gave Kamala Harris 87% of the time positive coverage and 87% of the time negative coverage to Donald Trump. That's clues. Those are context clues pointing and suggesting bias. But they sit here and lie in your face and talking about their objective. Don't piss on us and say it's raining, guys. This is the media. The media loves gaslighting people. And I can keep pointing out, there's numerous examples. And then they're surprised why journalists are less trusted than car salesmen. Yes, you will trust a car salesman before you trust the media. That's how unpopular journalists are. Because they literally live in deception. Because if the deception benefits their political party, they'll say it. If the truth benefits their political party, they'll say it. But if the truth doesn't benefit their political party, aka Joe Biden is losing mental capacity, Joe Biden's mentally unfit to be president, they'll lean in deception to get you to get a certain outcome, because all they're looking for is outcomes, perception. I want to play this clip a little bit before I wrap up my thoughts of this lady. I'm getting pissed off too, because they're trying to put up this narrative that somehow Trump voters are regretting their vote. Instead of it being secondhand information, why not bring an actual Trump voter on the panel and let them speak on their own behalf? I'm tired of all this secondhand information that somehow every Democrat know a Republican, when statistically that is unlikely to be true. Democrats, especially Democrat women, sorry, you guys are the least tolerant of opposite political opinions. You're the more likely to unfriend somebody if they express a different political opinion. You're less likely to date somebody who express a different political opinion. Look at all these shows where these woke liberal women get mad at a potential partner because he voted for Trump, he don't believe in BLM, or he went against some political orthodoxies of the Democratic Party. But you expect me to believe that somehow Republicans are talking to you about how they're regretting their vote for Trump. Yeah, okay.
I'm just wondering when Trump is going to create an executive order to overturn the Smiths and Munns Act where the media continues to lie to the American people. Because I am fucking tired of watching these lying ass media outlets talk about MAGAs and how we somehow regret our vote. I don't know if you guys understand this, but we don't. Stop lying on us. In fact, how about y'all focus on other aspects of this country instead of using your platform to continuously tear down the president of the United States every day? Because it's giving obsessed. You guys have become so obsessed with trying to make this man seem as if he's just the most horrible president. You fucking forget what we just went through over the last 4 years. I'm just confused as to when we become so comfortable with the media lying to us. When are they going to create laws against this shit? Because nobody even knows what's true anymore. We don't even know what's fact anymore. We're arguing about news that's being taught to us from two different sides when we need just the fucking news. Just tell the news. Stop trying to make it seem as if this man is doing shit that has never been done before. Like, you need to stop it.
Yeah, and they won't stop it though. Political bias. Political bias. I talk about how it's a problem all the time. If you go on my channel, you search up my channel, I talk about the media extensively because I believe information, our knowledge system, is some of the most important aspects of a culture. Where do you get our knowledge from? How does the knowledge become common consensus? And how can we validate if that common consensus is true? That is a knowledge system. And our media has polluted our knowledge system to the point where now, since liberal bias is so infused in a lot of these institutions, they spew out knowledge that comes more across as propaganda than actual fact. They're talking about climate change, but there's evidence, there's knowledge out there that suggests that climate change is an overreaction. It's hysteria. Climate change isn't as dangerous as it's painting it out to be. But if your knowledge system or your institutions that's responsible for distributing, and facilitating and exposing knowledge to the masses is only coming from one filter and it's filtering out information that's critical of the climate change agenda, is it no wonder that young people are bought into climate change to the point that they have a new symptom called climate anxiety? So when I come out and I say climate change is not a big deal, I'm more afraid of climate danger. What constitutes climate danger? Will the climate change threaten the survival of the human species? Yes or no? And does the human species have the ability to adapt to the new climate danger? That's what I care about with climate change. A lot of this climate change hysteria is freaking out over the Fahrenheit going up 0.2%. It's the hottest summer ever. Can I get the number of the hottest summer ever? Oh, it's like 0.2%. Oh, so not even a percent. It's 20% of a percent. Wow. I'm really freaking out here. And the funny part is it's not a consistent trend. It goes up 1 year, goes down 1 year. It goes up 1 year, goes down 1 year. Almost like the 4 seasons. But they want you freaking out over this. They want you not to have kids over this. Brain rot. And I really do believe that there needs to be something done about the blatant deception from the media and how the media has this lack of ability to check its own bias. I remember I did a video on the NPR CEO, how her whole board is made up of nothing but liberals, and she expected them to be objective. She expected their bias not to come into play in their work. We have to recognize that bias is a problem in the media, and the medias are not taking any step to rectify that. They're not incorporating people of opposite political affiliations into their field. Democrats and liberals always talk about diversity, how diversity is important. But when it comes to political kind of worldview, they don't believe in diversity. Because if they truly believe in diversity, they'll hire more Republicans. They'll make it a conservative. Hey, we need more conservatives in journalism because of how biased the institution has become. And they wonder why they have lost trust with the American public. But I'll leave it off there. Let me know your thoughts and perspective in the comment section below. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Please share this video if you feel so inclined. It really does help me out in the algorithm. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.